everybody, welcome to Watch This with Dennis, and today's live stream is going to be a this or that, or as we like to call it, ToT, because it's more adorable when we say it that way. This is the sixth ToT. It's pretty exciting, and we've got quite a big panel of players to participate. So let's go ahead and do some introductions. And if you're wearing a watch, I guess we can do a wristwatch check at the same time. And I'm going to go ahead and start in my lower right corner and say Ken.
Oh, hey guys. I mean, I really don't deserve it, but I mean, I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm just a watch collector and an enthusiast. I'm a huge fan of Dennis's channel. Tony and Dave. I think this game is just hugely underrated in all of YouTube, and so is Dennis's channel in general. So I'm just here to just try to participate before Dennis just gets too big for us all.
I don't think we're at really any risk of that happening, but
his ego cannot get any bigger.
Yeah. No, I'm already what they call "quote unquote" pinball famous.
No,
I
I think you should patent this show, honestly, before one of the other dealers or whatever starts stealing this idea. I really think it's awesome.
The problem is I stole this idea from another YouTube channel.
Okay.
Not a watch YouTube channel. It's a pinball YouTube channel.
I see. Okay. This or that pinball. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yep. On Straight Down the Middle is the name of that channel. And but then again, all ToT is really would you rather with a cleverer name.
No, but these are real decisions, especially what you're going to do today. They're real decisions that people will make every day. You have this much amount of money. What are you going to get? Yeah.
And I'll say hello to Kevin and Nicholas, who've already tuned in to the live stream. And now I'm going to kick it over to the other person who's first timer on this channel. That would be Alton. Welcome, Alton.
Hey everybody, good to see you. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I only recently found out about your YouTube channel, Half Past Blog, because I saw Design Atelier had shared a link to it, and I had missed it. So I've watched a few of your videos already. You've got a really nice. You must do a lot of B-roll shots, because you put together like my reviews are like almost all A-roll with like a loom shot and maybe one outside wrist roll, and that's it that I do for B. But I could tell you put in a lot more effort.
Well, yeah, 3 years ago, that's exactly what I was doing, but I've really enjoyed the creative process. So I try to do something new with every video, something unique for me, whether that's stealing something from Design Atelier and doing it myself, which I have done. It's just a lot of fun. And I really enjoy getting to know people in the watch community, and I guess now in the pinball community too. So that's cool.
Oh, and before I move on further, Ken, I forgot to add, I swear I saw a watch on your wrist.
Oh, wristwatch check, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope I don't take too much time here, but yeah, I'm wearing your anus, guys. Your anus. Yeah.
Good choice.
I passed by.
I was picturing it to be darker than that.
Yeah, bleaching's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I picked it up. I was looking for mercury, but then I'm like, maybe my wife will like it, but she didn't like it. I was thinking about returning it, but the plastic fell off because the thing's such cheap crap. But I actually like it. It's fun. It's fun. You're with kids. I think it's a really fun watch. I like that it's light, and it was either this or my next choice would have been Tony's favorite over here.
Pepsi.
A Pepsi, yeah.
Oh.
I didn't want to get off the wrong foot with you and annoy you right away, Tony. So I decided to stick with the Moonswatch today.
Yeah, I went with a Mission to the Sun. Actually, I really like.
Yeah, I saw last time. Yeah, they're great.
Alton,
they're really fun. Yeah.
Alton, you got anything on?
So my channel is mostly affordable to mid-range, kind of that $1 to $1,500 range. Mm-hmm. And lately I've not really been into Casio a whole lot, but I've just gone down that rabbit hole and G-Shock. So today I've got my 90s inspired brand new DW6900.
I don't think I've seen that one before. Wow.
Yeah.
What's the diameter on that?
Big. For reference, I've got an 8.5-inch wrist. So
welcome to the club.
Oh, you and Tony are wrist buddies.
I can pull that off. I think it's 54.
All right, that sounds a little worse than I meant it to, but speaking of Tony, cool. Tony, introduction time. Who are you?
I'm Tony. Today I'm wearing my hack, which looks absolutely tiny on my 8.5-inch wrist. I'm actually in search of a bund strap. I'm going to convert to a bund strap, but I haven't found one that I exactly like yet. So I'm still looking for that. Otherwise, I'm mainly a pinball guy who also likes watches, and I'm looking forward to doing yet another ToT because they're a lot of fun.
Awesome. And Dave, I'll have you round us out.
Yeah, I'm David Dennis. I'm co-host of Silverball Chronicles, a pinball history podcast. You can check us out at silverballchronicles.com or patreon.com/silverballchronicles if you want to join us there. Today, I'm wearing my Casio F91W-1. Actually wore this all day. I didn't just put this on fancy for today. I wore this one. I wore it with a suit today.
Wow.
I wanted to dress it up. This is a good one. I have the F91W, the black. I also have the silver, which I really enjoy. But very comfortable. If I break one, I can go find another one. It's fantastic. I picked this one up at the same time I picked up a bunch of Casios kind of all at once. So all of a sudden I became a Casio collector just like in a day.
Awesome.
That
I
happens.
do see Paul here in the chat had noted about he loves Omega, finds them a bit thick, which is something I know others have run into. And I see Tony has answered in the chat the question that Von Kroll had about which hack was it. I think it shared out the link. So yeah, looks like it went out.
Looks
so
like
you
it
should be able to see that. And okay, obviously I'm Dennis, host of Watches with Dennis, and I think that's probably all I need to say about that. And now I feel I probably should have been wearing my Orient, actually my Orient Cano for the last few days, but I've been doing a big trade with Watchbox, and my Longa one came today. So I'm wearing that.
Serious? Wow.
I gave up
Congrats.
a big chunk of my collection to get that. And unfortunately, it runs about a minute fast. So it may need to go back in for regulation because I'm like, guys, did you check it? The amplitude and the beat error are fine on my time grapher, but it's running like 55 seconds plus. And I'm like, that's what warranties are for. But otherwise, it's used, obviously. I can't.
You've got no Casios left, do you?
I still have my Casio, absolutely.
Wow.
My Casio G-Shock, my Orient, most of my affordables I kept, but I gave up my Santos, my Black Bay, my IWC Portuguese, my Glashütte Panomatic Lunar, and my Grand Seiko Spring Drive. I gave all of those up.
Hey, that's worth it. That's worth it. You consolidate.
Yeah, this one was one of my grails, and I could never justify springing that much cash. But when I factored in the collection, I was like, I could cover the rest of it.
Congrats,
so
man.
That was the logic.
Yeah, I think you're done, especially at least in the dress watch category. Yeah, that's like the ultimate grail.
I could have gotten a lot less. I kept my Reverso. So close, but I love the Reverso so much. I couldn't. I was just like, I have two dress watches still. But
that's an icon.
You go to Polo, right?
But that was the logic.
You got to take your Reverso to Polo.
So maybe looking at some new sports watches, or maybe looking at some micros. I haven't done some. I did some in the past, but I haven't played in the micro space very much. I've done more like name brand, things like Tissot and such instead. But watching Alton's channel, I'm starting to think, there's a lot of value though in the independents, and maybe I should explore that more than I have.
I can help you out with that if you have any questions.
Excellent. I love help. But what I really need help with is learning about Aston Martin. That's what I've learned about over the last day.
Okay.
That's not the subject.
You don't have to. You don't have. I don't.
That's a bit of an insight. That's a little bit of insight. That's a little inside.
It wasn't.
Little comment section reference. But let's go ahead and get to the game. This or that. So this or that. We are going to start off with. I guess I should go ahead and announce it's in the title, but all of these, and this was really Ken's suggestion. All of these are farmed out of WatchCharts Market Index. So for those that aren't familiar, and I do have a link to WatchCharts in the video description, that's a site that tracks sort of the market of watches. And the way they've done it is they have an index that they've established using 60 luxury watches of various price points across 6 very well-known brands. So I've taken very similar priced watches at a variety of those price segments. But in theory, these are all watches that a lot of people that are looking into purchasing are likely to encounter and likely to be considering. So we'll actually start on the sort of what one might start in the entry-level luxury space. So here we go. A little higher than what I consider. For me, entry luxury is $1,000, but nonetheless, these are still quite approachable for a lot of people. And the matchups are going to be the Breitling Super Ocean and the Tudor Black Bay 58 in blue. And I will be, for those of you who are here live, I will create a poll for you all to be able to vote as well. I've got a cheat sheet. Yes, these are the notes of the timestamps of all the editing I had to do in the last episode that Tony and I did on pinball, because I have to write them down so I save time in my edits. And I've turned the rest of it into a tracking sheet for today. So I do things very old school. So as you can see on the screens, everyone, you should be able to read all of this. Some of the color coding is going to be a little bit, I don't always do the best overlays. So, but anyway, we're talking about the Breitling is a 42 millimeter watch, dive watch. Both of these obviously are. The Breitling's 13.5 millimeters thick, 500 meters of water resistance. It's only a time plus date watch, and it runs on what they call the B17, but that's really just an eBosch 2824 with their own caliber branding. Then Tudor's Black Bay 58 in blue uses their in-house MT5402 movement. That's a 70-hour power reserve movement that I think most people who've looked at Tudor are familiar with. It's only a 39 millimeter watch. It's thinner at 11.9 millimeters, but it also only has 200 meters of water resistance, and it has no date function. It is a time-only watch. So I'll go, I guess, as an example, I'll go ahead and lead off on this one, and then I will create the poll while the rest of you vote. Between these two, I would probably go, and obviously there's about $200 delta between the two units in terms of market pricing. I would go with the Tudor myself, even though I like the dial color better on the Breitling. And that's for two reasons. One, my wrist is 6.75 inches in size. And so I can do 42 millimeters, but I would prefer doing 39. And that's the main reason. The other thing is I don't really swim much. So given that, if I was thinking if I was going to pull a Dave and instead of wearing the Casio, I was like going to say, what am I going to wear with the suit? I think I could be able to execute the more classic design of the Black Bay than I could with the Breitling. So that's really the main reasons why I would go with that. I've never owned a Breitling myself. I did have a Black Bay Bronze, which is a much larger version than the 58. But like the bezel action was really good on it. And it was also time only. And I really liked the dial layout. So those aspects of Tudor I am fond of. And so for those reasons, I would go ahead and go with the Tudor. Dave, you're up.
Oh, this is going to surprise everybody. I'm a big Breitling fan. I love Breitling in general. More of their newer stuff as opposed to that weird 2000s excursion they had there. But I'm going to go with the Tudor Black Bay. It is a beautiful watch. That's the one that brought back sort of that throwback style. I don't like the snowflake hour hand, but I'm willing to sort of bend on that one. It's a beautiful little dress watch, but it's got that beautiful in-house movement. The MT was it 5402. It's got that 70-hour power reserve. It is a great movement. It's not like a hand-me-down movement like in the Breitling. So oddly enough, I'm not going to go with the Breitling Super Ocean.
A shoe.
I am also a sucker for a blue watch. Like,
Okay, well, all right. So we got two now for the Tudor. Tony, you are up, sir.
I am going to go with the Tudor as well.
Really?
But
you
the
love
reasoning
orange.
is I do love orange, but I already have an orange dive watch. And while my collection is small, I don't see a reason to have two watches that might as well be identical in the collection, because I've got my rotary Super 7 in orange. So I'd go with the Tudor just because of the color differentiation between them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right with 3 so far. Ken.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis, I just want to talk about Tudor for a sec as a brand, and not before I get to the watch itself. I have a few Tudors. I like the watches, but there's just so many things I can nitpick with the brand. Like this year's release, I think they do so many things that are, either wrong by design or just, they could do better. Like they could, just include bracelets in all their watches instead of just like separating out a bracelet version, a NATO version, and whatever leather strap version. They should go back to thinner and lighter cases for most or all their watches, like this one. Get rid of the rivets and include glide locks. They could do that. I mean, more glossy dials, less homages, and yeah, I mean, and with all that said, yeah, definitely, I take the Tudor Blue, Black Bay 58 Blue. I mean, main reason, not just because it's like a great watch for just a one watch or two watch collection, but I just don't think, I just think it's not a homage. All right, a lot of their watches are just Rolex homages, but this one, I always believe that Rolex will not make a blue dial or a blue bezel sub in steel. I always believe that they will not go that route. So I think this watch is really, really safe in the Tudor 58 Blue.
That's true. I guess the blue one that I remember of theirs was steel and gold, wasn't it?
Yeah, the bluesy two-tone, and they have a white gold, or they have the Smurf before, but in steel,
That's right, the Smurf too,
yeah, in steel, yeah, for many reasons, I just think they won't do it in blue in steel.
Yeah, they wouldn't want to cannibalize the
Right.
the
Exactly.
market.
Yeah.
And Alton, you get to round us out here. Will you break the mold?
All right.
Will you
Well,
not let this be
I'm
a
not a
clean
huge
sweep?
fan of orange watches, but I do like the large numbers on the Breitling. But I can't stand the asymmetry with the date there at 3. That just
Yeah.
I couldn't handle that. Sorry. So I'm gonna have to go Tudor on this. I'm not a big fan of that hour hand either, but the rest of the watch is really classy. It's very simple. It's a little bit boring, but sometimes boring is good in a 39 millimeter watch. It's 11.9 millimeters thick, so it's going to fit under any cuff. You could wear it to work. You could wear it with a t-shirt. You could take it diving. It'd be a great watch. I'm going to go with Tudor.
Awesome.
Wow, a sweep.
It is a
Has
sweep.
that
Am I the
happened
only?
before?
Maybe once upon a time, like on the second ToT. But am I the only person? Man, maybe I am. Am I the only person here who doesn't is okay with the hour hand as a snowflake? Because
No,
Yes,
I
it
actually
doesn't-
kind of
it-
like the snowflakes.
I don't like it on like the chronos that they started doing because it blocks out the whole sub dial for 2 hours at a time, and I'm like, why would
Right.
you do this? But like
That
functionally, I'm
makes
just like,
sense.
where was your design? I get that most people who wear chronographs don't actually use the chronographs, but I still want to at least pretend that we care.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, is that? Oh, that's the one I
Yeah.
meant. Ken.
Yeah, covers
Yeah,
covers
that's a
up
little-
the chrono.
How do you-
Perfect.
Really?
I like
It's
I like my
alright.
Tudors, guys. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I
that's
don't
the great,
mind-
That's the great thing about watches is we can like different
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And,
I do think I like the I don't remember. I've seen a picture of it. They've got one where it's more of just the round lollipop style than the snowflake. I like that better. But I do like the snowflake. It's fine. It's just something nice and different than what you see most of the time.
And hitting on the chat before I close out the poll, because some of them had commented on some things, I'll just note we won't really go over predictions here on Watches and Wonders. Maybe at the end, if people want to throw out some stuff, we might talk about it then. Now I've stuck you into having to stick around for 90 plus minutes. So notice the cleverness of feeding my algorithm. Von Krell notes he does appreciate the Black Bay 58 being a thinner watch. Paul says he thinks that the Breitling uses ETA movements. He is correct. At least the one we looked at does. That's the B17 is a 2824-2. And let's see. Paul also noted he does like the B01 movements, which I've heard very good things about. Neff doesn't think much of the Breitling clasp, which is something we didn't really discuss. I've never experienced a Breitling clasp though, so I couldn't really comment on that. Nicholas does like the snowflake hands. Okay, so several of us are okay with snowflake hands. And Paul has felt that the Tudor has done pretty well lately. So, all right, excellent. Let me go ahead and close. I have to hop to a different window to close the polls. This is the fun of using the free version of StreamYard. And I think pretty unsurprising given the results of the panel, but the Black Bay won 77%.
Huh.
So it was not a clean sweep with the full audience, but nor should it be. I'd be a little afraid if that was the case. Okay, so I mean, well, I get over it really quick because I don't really care all that much. So speaking of caring, let's up the dollar points and move up
Wow.
quite a bit. That's right. Now we're getting into that ridiculous area. I don't know. I think this might be the most expensive matchup I have tonight, but maybe not. We'll find out. Okay, so Vacheron Constantin's Overseas Tourbillon stainless steel. This is the 6000V model versus the Platinum Rolex Daytona, the 116506. The overseas these are both about the same market price in terms of the overseas is about $128,000 currently, whereas this version of the Daytona is $125,000. Though the MSRP, I do want to note, is quite a bit different. The Rolex is inflated quite a bit because that's a $78,000 watch, whereas the Tourbillon is a $115,000 watch. Size is pretty similar. The Tourbillon, I'll just say the overseas. The overseas is 42.5 millimeters versus the 40 millimeter Daytona. It's a thinner watch though, 10.39 millimeters versus 12 millimeters thickness on the Daytona. The water resistance is only 50 meters on the Tourbillon, whereas like with most Rolexes, you get 100 meters of water resistance. The Tourbillon is stainless steel, has no other complication other than the Tourbillon, whereas obviously we have a chronograph function on the Daytona, and it is a platinum metal watch. And both of them are using their own in-house movements. The 80 hours of power reserve on the Vacheron, but that is a 2.5 hertz movement, and a typical 72-hour 4 hertz movement out of the Rolex. So since I started last time, Dave, it rotates to you.
Oh, over to me.
Yes, I will start the poll while we do.
I don't like a lot of Rolexes, flat out. Just not a big fan of a bunch of Rolexes. But Tony, I'm a big fan of the Daytona. The Daytona is absolutely stunning, and it doesn't matter what color in panda, reverse panda, gold. It's got colors on the dial. It doesn't matter. But this is absolutely beautiful in its own right. This color combination of the light blue, and if I recall, it's actually very huey, changes very much with the movement and the light. I can't recall what the watch face is called, like the material.
I think it's a sunburst style. I don't know what they did on the dial, though.
Yeah, and it really looks great whenever I've seen them on like Instagram rolls and stuff like that. Very reels, very good. I mean, how can you not go with a Daytona? I mean, it's not a holy trinity, but I mean, it is the Daytona.
Okay, Dave is a Daytona person, at least in this instance. Tony,
let me tell you how you go without a Daytona. You go with the
Please
Vacheron.
tell me.
You go with the Vacheron because, well, I prefer the blue on the Vacheron. Honestly, this isn't just my dislike of Daytonas. I actually prefer the blue on the Vacheron. I do think that it is just a nicer shade of color. It is the one I would go with. It's thin, very thin, and I don't know. I'll be honest. Part of it's me not liking Daytonas flat out, but that blue with the complication, the tourbillon complication, I just think it looks great on the face. And I'm also not a big chronograph fan. I've got one, and I rarely wear it because the watch face is just too busy for me.
Okay. So now we're split, one for Vacheron and one for the Rolex. Ken, you got to break the tie for now.
Tony's right. I mean, the Vacheron blue is probably the best blue, one of the best blues on the market, if not the best. Design wise, I mean, I feel like the Tourbillon gets a little bit in the way of the blue. Vacheron is, I mean, it's obviously holy trinity, movements like a billion times better finishing, better quality, just better watch in general in the Vacheron. But with that said, I mean, listen, I mean, this Rolex is it came out in 2013. It's the 60th anniversary of Daytona's. Huge discontinuation rumors this year. One day it will get discontinued, and once it gets discontinued, it's going to shoot up back to over 200K. Vacheron, I mean, as nice as Vacheron is, it's still, it's I'm sorry, Dennis, but like Lange, it's still a Richemont brand. I just think Vacheron's more of a brand that just as nice as the watches are, it's just a brand that just follows the market instead of like a Rolex Daytona, which sets the market, if I'm making sense. So give me the platinum Daytona. It's the higher beta watch, and it also feels great on the wrist. That half.
All right. All right, so Ken is down for the Daytona. Alton.
The Vacheron has superior finishing from what I understand. I've never purchased one. I purchased a Casio Royale the other day. It has superior color, in my opinion, and that's subjective, and superior movement. But I think it's ugly. I really do. And the Daytona is one of the most well-balanced dials out there. And the case and everything is well proportioned. It's a classic. I wish it was a different color, but I'm going to go with the Daytona.
All right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Well said. The Tourbillon is not for everybody. Like that skeletized look, for some people, it just doesn't, they just don't. And I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
That's my
Same.
biggest issue here as well, actually, looking at this matchup. So I'm not enamored by the Tourbillon as a complication. Like I don't seem to get the same enjoyment out of watching them. And I've never gone around and handled one. This is all from videos. I've never really loved watching the Tourbillon as a complication. Like for me, the minute repeater is the pinnacle complication, not the Tourbillon. And I just don't tend to like how they look. That being said, I don't like the dial color on the Rolex at all either. And I've seen
crazy.
better outside of renders. I just like the blue. They both did the sunburst. I like the Vacheron burst better. I like the Vacheron's dial configuration better, aside from the Tourbillon. Given what experience I've had with Rolex, I'm betting that the Rolex probably is more comfortable to wear, even though both of these are quite wearable sizes in my opinion. And I do like the thinness on the Vacheron. I think in these instances, just because I would prefer so many other different types of Daytona, I'd probably go ahead and I'd pick the Vacheron just to give it a shot. And that's just thinking from a wearing standpoint, because I think maybe I would fall in love with it. Whereas I think I know what I'm getting with the Daytona, but like if I go with my true gut and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to like either of these, the Rolex would be the smart option because I'm going to be able to sell it for more eventually anyway than I would ever get out of a VC. But that being said, that's not what I'm going to factor. So I'm actually going to go ahead. I'm going to pick the Vacheron. However, the Vacheron loses nonetheless 3-2 with the panel. So given that, let's take a look at a few of the chat comments that came in for a while, because I do see a lot of, we actually had quite a bit of a mix here. So Neff said that for him, the Vacheron was the easy pick, but he did note he does like the platinum on the Daytona. Bronco compliments the kind of hot horology of the 2.5 hertz. Actually, that for me, I thought 2.5 hertz is just a little like, it's a little 1960s to me. I don't know, but again, that's just me. Yeah, Paul points out how, the Daytona's got the iconic look that you'll be able to spot from a mile away, or at least from across the room. Nicholas doesn't get Daytona hype, but between the two, he would pick this Daytona. Bronco notes that the Daytonas wear pretty small. Your Rolexes do, at least all the ones I've handled, wear really well. It's something I really do like about the brand. Neff notes this isn't his favorite overseas, but he does like what all you get when you do a purchase of one of those. Paul notes the thickness on Rolex is really good, and there are a few others there. So let me go ahead and shut down the poll right here and quick. This one is actually closer than the last one, which would make sense. We were much closer in our split. Daytona does win 60% to 40.
Nice. I mean, real watch guys would prefer the VC, and I can definitely see that as well.
Well, it's interesting because Rolex is one of those companies because there's so much hype with it, and you get a lot of these people. Like the very first luxury watch I ever bought years and years ago was an Explorer 2. And that was because I had success. I had success in my job, and it's the only watch I knew. I was like, well, Rolex is quality, right? I should get a Rolex, and that's why I went and bought a used Explorer 2. Back then, you could barely give those things away. They were so unpopular. And it's like, as I got into the hobby during the pandemic and learned a lot more, I was like, wow, there's a lot more stuff going on if I would look beyond that. But, there are serious, I never want to discount it too much either, though, because there are serious watch collectors who, especially if you want to play it safe, if you're really worried about getting burned on the values of your watches, like I took a bath on a few of those trades for the Longa because they just like, obviously,
Well,
you know,
it's because
a company.
Watchbox will give you a bath.
Yeah, because they're
no.
doing a trade. Well, and that was one of the interesting things with doing that approach is, you know, I have those values. I actually went and paused on that deal and tried to sell them too, but unless I know buyers, I have to factor in my chrono or my eBay fees, my shipping and insurance fees, and then not getting my sales tax discount, because if I trade, I don't have to pay the sales tax. I only have to pay the sales tax on the delta. So all that stuff mathing together, it's kind of like, it's still a better deal to have sold, but it would have been a lot slower. So all that being said, even going back and looking, some of those prices on the secondhand market had fallen because I got some of those pieces. Most of those came in on the decline, but obviously things have fallen even more since then on a lot, because I didn't buy hype watches. And so let's go ahead and bounce to matchup number 3. We're going to see a VC again, so spoiler alert.
Ooh.
All right.
Wow,
So we're going to throw in Audemars Piguet and another overseas, much lower price point this time, however. So this is going to be the Royal Oak Extra Thin, the 1522. And then the overseas is the pink gold one, the 4300V 1110R, whatever. Y'all can read the reference if you want to look them up. So these are about $74,000 watches, secondhand. And but note the MSRP difference, because that Royal Oak was originally a $15,500 watch, whereas the Vacheron was more like $55,000. The Royal Oak is a 39 millimeter watch, only 8.1 millimeters thick, hence why they call it the extra thin. 50 meters of water resistance. It's a time plus date only watch. Fairly what I think of a stereotypical Royal Oak dial configuration and color, and it's powered by the 2121, which is 40 hour power reserve, 2.75 hertz movement. The overseas in this instance is a time plus date in pink gold, a little bit larger, 41 millimeters. Notably thicker, 11 millimeters, 150 meters of water resistance, blue dial, pink gold case, and it uses the caliber 5100, which is not a slow movement like the Tourbillon was. It's a 4 hertz movement with 60 hours of power reserve. Okay, Tony, here you go. Which one would you take?
Don't let us down, Tony.
This is hard. I mean,
that's really hard. It's really hard. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I like the Royal Oak a lot. My concern with the Royal Oak is it is an extra thin, and I have an 8.5 inch wrist. It is a 39 millimeter, 8.1 millimeter thick on my 8.5 inch wrist. I'm afraid somebody won't even be able to see it. I'm afraid I might not see it sitting there. But then the Vacheron's gold, and I'm not a huge gold watch person. It is, it's rough. I'm probably going to end up going with the Royal Oak, just because I prefer that look over the gold. But the Vacheron still has that lovely blue. I love that blue on the Vacheron. I love the hands on the Vacheron better, but I like the Royal Oak's entire case better. So I'm going to go with the Royal Oak, but this is literally, I could throw a dice and pick one, and I would be perfectly happy with either of these.
Okay, so you ended up going with the Royal Oak. And Ken.
Yeah, so Dennis, you gave us a hint of the Royal Oak, and I was pretty certain I would pick this one. See, I mean, years back I wasn't a big fan of the nuts and bolts look, but once you see them in person, they're pretty spectacular. And this one, this Royal Oak in particular, the 15202, the jumbo, is what, you know. I mean, let me take a break for a sec, but AP, I mean, they're just the Royal Oak brand at the moment, and I just think there's so much risk in that. You go on the website, there's 120 different variations of a Royal Oak. I mean, they're just too invested. They're just milking this for everything that it's worth. I mean, AP as a brand in general, I mean, it's you know, they really changed their strategy into more of like marketing towards athletes and music and movies, a lot of mainstream media. I mean, I'm a little bit iffy if that's going to work for the brand in the long term, but they can always change. it's always like it's still going to be a holy trinity. So, this model, this particular model out of all of them is what I consider the flagship model of the entire brand. All right, this particular model, blue 1502 ST, out of everything. This is like the top model in their whole lineup. Not counting all their gems. Obviously even counting their gem stuff. But everyone wants this one. I was dead set on taking this, but Dennis, I mean, if after looking at the VC at the same time, yeah, I think I'm going to change it to the VC. I mean, you're giving me
Really?
you're giving me a full rose gold watch at 4 times the MSRP. I can't believe the MSRP for the Royal Oak is 15,000. That's got to go through some price increases. But I think I would take the VC based on the rose gold blue dial.
Yeah. I think the reason why the MSRP on this 15202 is so low is I think this one, maybe it's because of the ST designation, it was discontinued. So it's probably frozen in time from whenever that was.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I know they have the 16202 and
normally with WatchCharts, they'll note whenever the last year of the update was, so one can go and pull it up. Or I typoed it. I did that once when I left off a whole one off of a Blanc Pond 50 fathoms, and I said its MSRP was like $400, which unfortunately not, because I might actually buy one if that was true. Okay, so I've got you down, Ken, for the VC. Alton.
You know what? I actually really dig the gold and the blue on the Vacheron in this picture, but it is rose gold, and I know it's not going to look quite like this in real life. It's going to look just a little bit more feminine, just a little bit more rosy, and I'm not the kind of guy who could pull that off too well. I wouldn't really have a need to wear it. I think it might be the better watch, and the AP is isn't it kind of the Rolex Explorer of the segment? Like everyone's got one who can afford one. It's very well known. So I hate to hop on the bandwagon, and I'm not a huge fan of the waffle dial, but I suspect in real life, I'd probably really like it. So I'm going to go AP.
Okay.
Right, it's 35,000 is the 16202 is 35 large retail at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this one must have been. I assume they don't do the 15202 anymore, but this one is specifically the 15. That's the one that's in the market index. So because apparently a lot of people trade them.
Right.
Okay. Well, and Alton brought up some good points about the my concern. It's like. And oh yeah, I did, transitioning to me, I pull at the same thing because I normally like things that are a little less mainstream. Like I don't want to have the same sort of stuff everyone has. That's one of the things I liked about the Explorer too. After I got it, was like, well, it's not the sub that everyone has. The sub. Granted, I couldn't get a sub. It wouldn't have. It would have been too much for me at the time. So, but saying that aside, those sort of things. I actually really like rose gold, but in dress watches. I do like how this looks. I think this is one of the best photos or renders or however they did it. This is one of the most. Some watch companies seem to do an absolute terrible job about portraying their watch in an image, but I thought this one carried over very, very well. I like the aesthetic of the Vacheron, but when it comes to gold, I would rather have it in a dress watch. That's where I because it's such a soft metal in sporty scenarios. Again, I could wear it like a dress watch, but it
comes with a strap.
And I could throw it on the strap, and that would help quite a bit, obviously, because I feel a little less Sopranos when I'm not talking about a gold bracelet anymore. That being said, it's interesting because when I first got into the hobby, I didn't like the Royal Oak look. It was too weird to me. It had to grow on me, but it did grow on me versus the Nautilus, which I still don't care for. And I've come to accept a lot about and in fact, it's at the point where, which has of course come up in some of my other videos, where I'm very sensitive to things that feel like they're homaging the Royal Oak. And I don't like, if you've got that waffle tile, this is the thing that when I had a PRX, I didn't get the Powermatic version. I got the quartz so that I wouldn't have to have that pattern, because to me it looked like it wanted to be a Royal Oak, and I'm like, I don't want to, if I want that, I'll get a Royal Oak, or I'd think about getting one. Same with octagon bezels and all of that sort of thing, the screws and all that. So in this case, given how thin it is, and I really like thin steel watches, if I'm just being given one, which is the scenario where we've concocted, I'll go ahead and I'll take the AP. I'll go ahead and do that. Even though overall, I actually like the aesthetic of the Vacheron more. I think I would have more fun wearing the Royal Oak. So that's what I'm going to get. I'd go with. I'm torn on this one though, because I like both of them. But yeah, that's what I'll do. Okay, Dave.
Yeah, this is not as tough for me, I think, as it was for the rest of the panel.
Really? Why can't it be?
His wife won't let him not take the rose gold option.
That's
a fair point. Your wife is a fan of rose gold.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Royal Oak. In general, I don't like octagon watches. The screws and the bracelet style. I mean, it could be comfortable. I've never seen one in real life. But that being said, it just doesn't do it for me, like at all. When I look at the Vacheron, oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, granted, it is not a dress watch, but this is something that I would certainly wear in dressy type of occasions with that 18 karat pink gold. I'm pretty sure this is the one that comes with the straps in the package. I think it comes with the leather and I think a rubber.
Yeah.
Ken. Okay. So I mean, it gives you the options there to wear it in more sporty form, but that is all class, all day, every day. Now, Alton, you were 100% right. It probably doesn't look as yellowy in real sunlight, but I think I'm willing to gamble on that because somebody gave it to me for free.
That always helps smooth things out.
It's not my money. It's not my money.
Free. It's all right. So in this instance, we actually had the Royal Oak amongst the panel went out 3-2. Let me go ahead and stop at the poll. And the Royal Oak actually won 77% of the vote. So I actually thought it would be a little bit closer, as torn as we were. But you know what? The audience, they know themselves very, very well. I've learned.
They're true to themselves.
Well, it's popular for a reason, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I guess if you got tired of it, it would probably be I mean, I expect it will probably go up more as it continues to be more and more distanced from its discontinued status. But that gets tricky because if something like the 16202 is seen as just a vastly superior iteration, it might hold itself down. I remember price checking a while ago for another video. I did some Daytona modeling, and the Zenith El Primero movement Daytonas were significantly more affordable than the more modern ones, even though those sort of three generations were all seen as quote unquote modern interpretations of the watch. I don't know if that really had to do with movement. It maybe had more to do with how easy it was to scratch the bezel on those things. But I wanted to highlight Ronkrell's comment about the Tissot Gentleman. I do like the look of the Tissot Gentleman a lot. I just wanted to throw that out there. The one thing is the PRX has a great bracelet. I loved the PRX bracelet. And I know the Gentleman's bracelet's different. I'm not saying it's worse, but the PRX has a really good bracelet. So I just went.
Yeah. It's a Royal Oak style bracelet.
It was really, I mean, it was, I won't say it's the most comfortable bracelet I've actually ever owned was on a Zodiac. I got one of those Zodiac Super Seawolves, that watermelon edition they did a few years ago. Because they put a little bit of, it's almost like elastic in the band. So if your wrist swells up a bit, it actually does some give. It was super comfortable. It's like butterfly style. But anyway, there are no Zodiacs in the index, so we won't be doing any Zodiac comparisons.
Oh,
I know. I was sad too, but rules is rules. And speaking of rules, we got to go on to ToT number 4. Now we're going to come back down on the pricing. We were way up in the stratosphere for a while. So let's talk about two companies we haven't talked about, but they are in the index. So IWC, this is their Top Gun Pilot's Watch Chronograph. And I'm going to put that up against the Panerai Luminor. This is specifically the 8-day GMT model. So very, very different complications on these watches. They're together though, because they're both approximately $7,200. So the Top Gun is a 44.5 millimeter watch, 15.7 millimeters thick, 60 meters water resistance, whereas the Luminor is similar in diameter. It's actually a little smaller, 44 millimeters. That does not count the crown. I think with the crown, that watch is 49 millimeters in diameter. Thickness is 17.4 millimeters and 100 meters of water resistance. Obviously, the Top Gun is a chronograph. It's a day date, and I wanted to note this case is ceramic, not steel. That's why it's the color that you see. The Panerai is a steel watch. It's got the GMT function. It's actually got an AM PM indicator. That's what this subdial is at the 9 o'clock position. And then it's got a power reserve indicator here above the 6 o'clock. And it also has the date over at the 3. And they both use in-house 4 hertz movements. The IWC with 46 hours of power reserve and the Panerai with 8 days of power reserve. Okay, let's see. Who did I lead off with this last go? Was that Tony that I did?
Yep, you led with me last time.
So Ken, you get to kick us off.
All right, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if I was looking for a date, I think Panerai is the brand to go with. Is from everything I've always read. Panerai that Panerai just attracts women for whatever reason. But I mean, Panerai it has the bigger power reserve, GMT function. But I would go with the IWC because, even though IWC in the past has made some questionable decisions on their own right, I always thought they were overpriced compared to like their other competitors using like ETA or Salida movements back in the IWC. I know they don't do that anymore, but that's what I always attribute IWC with. But I'm just a sucker for a nice black watch. I don't think there's enough of them on the market, good ones, especially with a black ceramic bracelet. And this one's ceramic. Okay, that's great. I mean, I just think that the only ceramic options with the bracelet are AP and of course Gerard Perigo, your favorite Dennis, and then but those are just I just think that ceramic watches, they're at those price points, and I know we're not talking about GP or AP, but at those price points that they're asking for, I mean I'd rather go for like a gold watch if it's at those prices, a precious metal watch. So I think ceramics is overpriced at those price points, but this one I do as an all black option.
Okay, so Ken is down for the IWC. He didn't say it like that, but that's how I said it. My Southern's coming out to counter all the Northern representation that we have on the panel. So speaking of the North, Alton.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. My wrist was made for that Panerai, and so that's the one I choose. Absolutely great looking watch.
It's far less colorful than your current selection, though.
A little bit.
I prefer the colorfulness personally, but all right. So Alton's down for Panerai. Yeah, actually, I'm not a fan of either of these. Sometimes I pick matchups that I don't care for. I've never liked the look of the Panerai. Just doesn't work for me. I think it's okay on other people. I just don't think it works for me. I'm very distrustful of ceramic case watches. I'm very clumsy. I'm worried I'm going to break a chunk off of a lug and ruin that watch. So ultimately it comes down to dial configuration, and I prefer the IWC dial configuration, or at the very least I could go with the relative time comment, and at least I could buzz the tower with that watch and feel appropriate. I'd have to hijack the plane since I'm not a pilot, and I'd probably not be able to get it off the ground. But with enough Microsoft Flight Simulator, I think I could pull off that watch. So I'll go ahead and sort of reluctantly go with the IWC. I would like to try, spend some time with a ceramic watch and see if it's like, I hear a lot of people I listen to a blog to watch podcast, and I've heard a couple of people on there really praise the ceramic cases. I don't know. I'm probably just too conservative on it. I'm really
light.
Worried.
They're comfortable. They're light. That's okay. The idea. It's not,
and that's a nice thing. And I get that, they're pretty resilient to scratches, so you don't have to worry about the fact that you can't polish them. I'm just worried I'm going to drop it off the desk and take a chunk out of it. I mean, my first day that I had my Santos, I dropped it. It hit the edge of my keyboard desk here, and I put a big old dent right in the lug. That didn't help the resale value. And it's just like, well, but you know, if I wanted to keep the watch, I could have had that buffed out if I wanted to. It was more of a deep scratch than a chunk. But with ceramic, I'd be worried like all of a sudden I can't wear the strap anymore. But I will still go with it. I'll still go with the IWC. Dave.
Yeah.
Am I right? Did I give the right answer?
Dennis, you're only right when you agree with me, my friend. It's the IWC for me because I want the light ceramic watch itself. I've held a few ceramic watches and had them on. I've never worn them for an extended period of time, but I've put them on in a store, and I was really shocked with how light they were and how resilient they did feel. I don't know if there's a more beautiful looking, chronograph configuration other than obviously maybe a Daytona, but I love IWC watches, especially their pilots watches specifically. They always do, I would say, just the finer little things that make it just exciting. And that red subdial hand is just awesome. So cool. They do wear smaller for being larger watches, though. Being a 44.5, they're more like a 42. Like they are big on the wrist, but they don't overhang. They're not massive on your wrist. The Luminar Panerai, that looks like the watch of a Bond villain, doesn't it? Like you flick the switch on the top and then something comes out and just kills somebody.
Is that a negative somehow? I don't see a negative there.
That was what I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, no, I
want you to die, Mr. Dennis.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I play a lot of topless volleyball with my sweaty friends, so I'm going with the Pilot watch.
And that's reason alone, I would agree. Tony, you get to round us out.
I would like to play more topless volleyball, but but here I'm going to go with the Luminor because it looks like it's made for a Bond villain. I kind of like the squared off case look. I like the big protector on the crown. Just everything about it just makes it scream like solid and chunky, and I kind of like that.
I mean,
it's industrial.
It's
very industrial.
I mean, Ken was talking earlier about AP being the Royal Oak company. That design on the Panerai has done that company a solid for years and years and years, and they've really been able to basically just keep that same look and rework things about the dial and the features and have found, I think they've stumbled a little more lately, but I mean, there's a whole group of people that call themselves Paneristas for a reason. And so
I'm a big, I like that whole industrialist look is very good.
I always think of Stallone movies with him because he wears them. So like in the Expendables and stuff, you can watch. He's got Panerais on. Not this model. I think he wears a bronze one. But
I just think like if you're like a one design pony for a brand, it just opens you up to risk. Maybe not in the short term, but let's say for some reason octagons are like some type of like hate symbol one day, then what's going to happen to Royal Oak watches? And you saw Panerais, they were hot back in the day, and then now their resale value. You're lucky you can get anyone to pick them up. Maybe Watchbox could take them for a few pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting eggs with basket thing. And we've been going fast enough. We'll probably be able to touch on some broader topics after we get through, because we only have one more, and I told everyone to estimate about 90 to 120 minutes, and we're making great time, which is good for conversation. So I've gone ahead and ended the poll, and this one was the closest so far. The IWC won the poll at 57%, and that was another 3-2 split that we had amongst the panel. Now, for the last matchup we have, Alton will lead us off, and I have a couple new companies. They're not new to the world, new to this particular ToT that we've not seen yet. And again, we're going to keep the pricing relatively lower again, even though they're still obviously luxury. We're going to do Tag versus Omega. So these are both about $4,600. One is the Tag Heuer Monaco, famous square watch, specifically the CBL 2111. And then one of the many versions of the Omega Speedmaster. This is the 311 30 42 30 01 005. I know it's hard to read because I chose yellow and it blends in with the strap, and I was too lazy to change the color. So sizing, and square watches and rectangular watches get weird, but so the diameter is 39 millimeters on the tag. It's 15.2 millimeters thick, 100 meters of water resistance. It is a chronograph with date functionality. It's powered by the Heuer 2 movement, which is an 80-hour power reserve 4 hertz movement. The Omega is a 42 millimeter watch, 13.8 millimeters thick, only 50 meters of water resistance. Obviously, it's a chronograph. That's what it's known for. This is the Hazelite crystal model, in case people are thinking this is not the new sapphire sandwich. And this one's powered by the 1861, which this is pre-coaxial movement. This is a 3 hertz movement, 48 hours of power reserve. This is one of the older models. So, but they trade hands a lot, hence why they're in the index. So Alton, I've given you two fairly well-known watches that a lot of collectors try and get themselves into, especially if they're chronograph fans. What do you prefer?
This is a tough one. I mean, they're both great-looking watches. I feel like if I choose the Omega, I'm being pretty pedestrian. I don't know if that's if that should factor in or not. And I do have a thing for square watches. I don't own any in my collection. I love color. I love that it's different. I'm going to go with Tag.
All right. One vote for the Tag. And I've got the poll live for the audience so they can start voting. You know what, Alton? I agree with you. I'm going to go with Tag as well. I have never been able to get myself to like the Speedmaster. Well, let me caution because I'll get hate mail. I'll get myself to love the Speedmaster. It's so boring to me. It's clean. It can go with just about everything. I've always preferred to make a Seamaster line far and away to their Speedmasters. And the thing for me about it, and this is unfair, but I get to be, it's my channel. I get to be unfair. And all of you are welcome to be unfair as well.
Don't point out the penis, Dennis.
Yes. No, it's, the 12 o'clock indice markers have always bothered me on this watch. It is true. It actually does bug me. But the thing that's always bothered me about the Omega Speedmaster in general, especially this configuration, is you always hear this talk about, the moon. And I get why Omega pushes it. Here's the thing that always kind of bemuses me. They never talk about the chronograph, like praise it. Like, how good of a chronograph is it? Does the action feel good? Like, nothing. It's all about how the dial looks. And the Monaco was a watch built on it being this useful, back in the Heuer days, useful chronograph function. And so it doesn't have that same fashion vibe to me that the Speedmaster seems to have wrapped itself in. So given that, I'm gonna agree with Alton, and I like the color far more on the Monaco. It's interesting. I don't know if I would like wearing this. Rectangles, I like. Squares. But then again, I did have a Santos and I did enjoy it, but I didn't keep it. But maybe I'd keep this. It's at least more fun looking. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Monaco. Dave.
Come on. Could you have picked my favorite Tag Heuer? The Monaco. Beautiful. Got that small seconds right above the date window there. Right. It's just hidden. Right, nobody really notices it, but the wearer can see it. It spins just like the mouse there. It is beautiful. I absolutely love that. But man, I don't have a Speedmaster, and I would love a Speedy. I would love a Speedmaster. I would sell out. Absolutely, Dennis. Huge sellout. I mean, the chronograph on that is so smooth. Pushing those buttons feels fantastic. But man, that dial, how beautiful is that dial, and how fashionable is it? And it can go with anything. It's great. Oh, this is a tough choice. I am an Omega fanboy. This is really tough. I'm gonna go with the Tag.
Oh wow! I didn't think
'Cause
I
want-
knew you
I
had
want-
I remember when you got a few vintage Omegas and such. I thought for sure you couldn't resist the Speedmaster.
No, if I were gonna go with the Speedmaster, if I was gonna go with the Speedmaster, it would be it wouldn't be the new crystal sandwich that they've got out, the coaxial master chronometer. I would get there's one in between the 1861 and the new 8809, I think. I can't remember.
There's a modern Heselite one that they make.
That's the one I would, yeah. That's the one.
I don't know
the
20-digit reference number, but
yeah. Oh, that's the 311-39 01007.
okay. Well, it's 3 for tag. Tony, will you break this?
It's tough. I'm like you. I prefer the Seamaster line when it comes to Omega. And I've never had a square watch. But I've got a rectangle because I've got the classic G-Shock rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my most worn watch because it's the watch I wear to work. Anytime, any day that I think that I'm actually going to be out in the field or doing like real work, I wear the G-Shock. I pretty much only wear one of my other watches when I know I'm going to be in meetings most of the day, just because of the nature of my work. And I love it. That's just the perfect watch. And I don't know how well a square would compare to that rectangle. But I mean, just on straight looks, I prefer the Monaco. The Speedmaster's the classic Speedmaster look, but like I said, I'm not a huge Speedmaster guy, so I'm not going to be breaking it. I'm going to go with the Monaco as well.
All right. It comes down to Ken.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I agree. The Monaco is definitely a more fun watch. I mean, speedy, like you said, Dennis, it's definitely boring. And plus also to that same point I keep harping about, I just think Omega just keeps coming out with just way too many variations of the Speedmaster in order to make any of these Speedmasters, collectible or investable. That said, it's still an Omega and brands count. Tag Heuer is, I mean, what I always thought of as like a high school or like a Macy's type brand. The way that they mismanaged their marketing for all these many years. So, yeah, I think just, I mean, looks wise, yeah, the Monaco's, definitely more fun, but in a collection, the Speedy, the Speedy is definitely an icon, and I'd have to go with the Speedy.
Okay. Saved us from another 5 stack. I don't know if the internet could have taken it. And actually ending the poll, holy cow, I am surprised. The tag actually won it 62%.
Yeah. So I looked up the reference number. It was 310 30 42 50 01001. That is the Speedmaster that I would purchase. That's the coaxial Heselite version.
All right. So just a quick recap. Let me go ahead and stick us here at the bottom of the screen so you can just see the watches. All right. So matchup number 1 was the Breitling Super Ocean Automatic versus the Tudor Black Bay 58 in blue. We all agreed on the Tudor, and the audience was in agreement as well at 77% of the vote. Our second matchup was the Vacheron Tourbillon Overseas versus the Platinum Rolex Daytona. We were split 3-2 in favor of the Rolex. Excuse me, I was looking down my list too far. And the audience also agreed at 60% that the Rolex was superior. Third matchup was the AP Royal Oak Extra Thin, the old model, the 15202, versus the Vacheron Pink Gold Overseas. We were 3-2 in favor of the Royal Oak, and the audience was as well at 77% of the vote. The fourth matchup was the IWC Ceramic Top Gun watch versus the 8-day Panerai. We were 3-2 in favor of IWC's watch, and the audience was as well, but it was the closest matchup of the night at 57%. And then on the tag versus Omega, we were 4-1 in favor of the tag, and the audience was as well in favor of the tag at 62% of the vote. So that's the game. And we still got some time. So I want to pick Alton's brain a little bit, and I'm going to pick on Ken's brain some because they're first timers and I want to get some info. So Alton, obviously we talked a lot about these very traditional brands because that's what WatchCharts uses for its market index. And we talked about like, brands that are known, brands that are not known. And I know you focus a lot in the micro space. What do you think is one of the smaller watch brands that people don't know about that they should know about?
Oh, that's a great question. One of my favorites is a brand called Vero. I don't know if you've heard of that.
It rings a bell. I'm going to try and look it up so I can put something up on the screen while you talk.
Yeah, they really focus on outdoor adventure watches, but that look really, really good, really built to purpose, and their focus is on how they wear. So everything they design wears really well. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about them.
Okay, and they are what, VERO?
Yeah.
All right, I think I found them.
Yeah, they don't have a ton of watches, and they aren't afraid to take a few risks. I got a couple behind me in the cabinet.
Very nice.
I like that. What is it? The Workhorse Track Day.
Yeah, let's see if I can grab it for you. I don't have the track day, but
Weird.
okay, so this is it's an interesting watch. It's like a lot of glare. It's a chronograph with great big buttons on the side. It's a bit of a hockey puck, but it definitely is.
It's a very Canadian reference.
Very unique. Yeah, I got a lot of glare here. I don't think this is working. So this one is not slim, but it is definitely built to purpose, and it's rough and tumble. It's sort of like a G-Shock. If you want a micro brand G-Shock, I would say it's quartz. And then this one, I really, really like this one here. It's got some German kind of influence to it, I think. Again, I can't get a good picture on it.
No, that's great.
But
I'm
I
interested
really like
in
this brand.
how large the bezels are. They seem very easy to grip.
Yeah, and great feel to it. Just
Nice
really nice
sound.
and clicky. Just really solid watches. This watch was, I don't know, $700 or something. Nice bracelet, nice finishing. It's almost titanium looking.
Mm-hmm.
The brushing on it, really nice. So, I mean, there's a lot of great micro brands out there, but that's one you said that not a lot of people know about that I really appreciate. And,
All right. And I've dropped a link in the chat for folks that are reading the chat or watching the recording. You can go and you can check out the site.
Yeah,
Have
so
you seen
Vero,
the Whitney watch?
I want to see some watches in my possession soon.
Yeah. Have you seen some Whitby Watch Co. watches from Ontario?
Yeah, absolutely. They make really nice, little bit on the larger side, and they're not afraid to go a little bit higher end for micro brands. So
Okay.
I had a chronograph with a Valjoux movement. I think it was $1,600, which is higher end, like higher price tier for that kind of thing. I just did a nice diver from Whitby Watch Co. And yeah, I really like those guys. Solid dudes, and they make good stuff. Yeah.
All right. Now turning to Ken, back on the more established brands, as we might say. You mentioned it when covering some of these, certain companies that have sort of made say questionable, we'll be generous and say questionable decisions in their marketing or their strategy that they've been approaching. And so I was kind of curious, what would be maybe two companies you think have been making the right moves in terms of what they've been doing in terms of, increasing their production capabilities or increasing their market perception, and two companies that have really dropped the ball. And I'd say if we can maybe try and keep it within the last 5 years or so. So just like recent ones.
Oh man. I mean, I think Rolex is the safest brand out there, as you mentioned as well, Dennis. I mean, they, it's not their lineup is, I mean, they spread out, they diversify their lineup into several different types of models, so you're not dependent on one. You pretty much can't go wrong with any of their models, almost, except for like maybe a couple like the Cellinis or less desirables, but pretty much everything in their lineup is a winner. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can hear about everyone saying like they pretty much know what they're doing. You know, they own roughly 28 to 30% of the market. That's, you know, pretty much they're the most important brand out there. So that's, you know, that's pretty an obvious one. Another brand that knows what they're doing. uh Yeah, I mean, I hate to give a boring answer, but Patek is on the lines of what not focusing on a single watch. They discontinued their 5711 because they didn't want to be known as the Nautilus brand. They wanted to focus more on their complications, which I feel is the right move. Even though they came out with a few more, they still come out with a few more Nautiluses here and there. But I think they got their long-term strategy right. So those two brands, you know, are the obvious answers that will still like keep their value and will be popular. And two brands that haven't been doing well. I meant I talked about it earlier on this channel. You know, Tudor. Even though, you know, I have a few Tudors, love wearing them. You know, they're a little heavy, which, you know, which is prompting me for more of like a black ceramic watch. I mean, Tudor, geez, I mean, I mentioned before. I mean, I like Tudor. I like Tudor when they were the cheap and attainable Rolex. All right, so I mean, that's nice that, you know, they made these like they're going to in-house movements. They try to differentiate themselves from Rolex. You know, like but I feel like they're just too I want to say burden heavy and trying to and they're just trying to not upset Big Brother too much, Tudor. But the thing is, I feel like that might be a mistake. I feel like they can still do well doing what they were meant to be. Like, do what you were born to be. Just be the more affordable, attainable Rolex. Go back to thinner cases. Go back to ETA movements. I don't think anyone gives. I don't think anyone gives a shit about Tudor in-house movements. You're never going to compete with anybody on movements if you're Tudor. Just do what you're supposed to be. You know, make the thinner cases and Rolex style, you know, cases, and I think you'll do much better in terms of sales and be a part of that CPO program. So, you know, one day folks can upgrade.
All right. Do others have any thoughts on any brands in particular? I was going to ask Alton, given where they were and this is not a company I've followed very closely because there's been a lot of talk lately. Christopher Ward has been getting, it feels like, more and more and more buzz. And I know, obviously, you know, let's set Bel Canto aside because they've attached an interesting price point to that. It's still a relatively obtainable watch for a complication, but it's been a company that's been quite a darling for. Is it even considered a micro at this point, or are there production capabilities beyond that?
Well, right now they're holding on to that micro brand status and micro brand circles, I think, because of the legacy. But they are starting to move beyond that, and if they aren't there now, they will be soon. The Bel Canto has seen an explosion in popularity for Christopher Ward, such to the point that their customer service is lacking and people are really struggling. They're buying watches and they're struggling to get them fixed, to even get communication back. And Christopher Ward has actually acknowledged this, and they have admitted, they've said, listen, the Bel Canto has exploded and we are struggling to fulfill orders, let alone take care of our customers when they have an issue. But I've worked with Christopher Ward. They've lent in a nice Sealander GMT, and I've purchased one Christopher Ward myself, and I really like it. They are the closest thing you're going to get to a luxury watch for the $1,000 price point. I think they really do offer a lot. They use in-house, or they use you know, Salida movements is one way they get around that, but the finishing and the design, that kind of stuff. And they do get a little homage from time to time as well. But I think they are, for $1,000, they're offering a lot more than you'd get for a Seiko $1,500, I think, a lot of the time.
Okay.
So yeah, it's still a good value, but I would, if I were to be looking at purchasing Christopher Ward, I might hold off another 6 months or so and just let them sort themselves out, hire some more staff, train some more staff, and funnel the profits they're making off of their new lines back into staffing and training and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if some people kind of got, I don't know if spooked is the right word, but given Christopher Ward has given an announcement of their impending price increase at the start of April, if that's triggered some people into pulling the trigger earlier than they wanted. This is something we see in the Dave and Tony and I see in pinball, where there'll be an announcement. It's like Stern's going to do their annual increase and it's going to go up 5%. So, can you buy something now?
Well, and it's not just that. They've stopped handing out certificates. So they would hand out $250 certificates. You could buy $1,000 watch for $750. I mean, it could have been $240 or $190. I don't recall. And the conversion between American and Canadian usually means the Canadian version's a little wonky. The American discount is, I think, pretty like $200, and we get $165 or whatever. But they've done away with that strategy, which is good for the value of Christopher Ward going forward. So when you buy a watch and then it's deeply discounted later on, it's hard to resell it for anything close to what you paid for it, right? But it is starting then to push them up market to a point where they're not going to be as accessible to the average person.
Okay.
I will say real quick
Tony,
on the Christopher Ward, because I was just looking at the Christopher Wards. I've never looked at him before. Man, I like that Dune. The C65 Dune series.
Yeah, that's
I know we were talking about the Bel Canto, but the Dune is just lovely. Especially the bronze. I mean, I'm a sucker for bronze anyway. But
and that's funny because that is one that hasn't been as well received as many of their more recent offerings.
Yeah, bronze is polarizing. I think partly that, the fad, I like bronze too. But it was, it's kind of like when we had the year of the green dials, and this has got both bronze and the year of the green dials. So kind of, those things, I think they're more cyclic than anything. So depends whether or not they want to keep them in the catalog, but
they've also got a really nice one with a blue dial and just a leather strap, and at sub 1,000 that looks pretty nice too. Even they're pretty. Oh, I was looking at the non-bronze one, but yeah, no, I have to say I like that design.
When it comes to Christopher Ward, I almost bought a Trident. That was the one that I had my eye on was the Trident, and it was more of a toned down. It's like a diver's watch, but divers watches are getting kind of weird, right? The bezels are getting thinner now. They're not quite as thick around the edges, which is, I guess, a style change at the moment. That was the one that I looked at, and I didn't end up going that way. I went with a Hamilton, actually. That's when I bought my Navy Pioneer. I went with that one instead.
Which size?
The
40?
40?
I've got the 43, and I love it.
Yeah. I have the 40. It's really cool. It looks very much like an old clock on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
They were really, really neat with the design, the blue hands. It's my daily driver. I wear it almost every day.
It's a great watch.
And that's where I went that way. And the reason I went that way was the ETA movement. I know that I could get it serviced in my smaller town, as opposed to Christopher Ward uses Salida, I think, right?
Use Salida, and they're having a lot of trouble with stuck rotors and other things happening to them. I had to send my C65 back for a stuck rotor. Now they do offer a 5-year warranty, so if anything happens, they're gonna take care of you, but still.
Yeah, back on the I guess the larger, like the Swiss brands and stuff, like what I asked Ken. Yeah, I agree on Rolex. They're basically do no wrong at this stage until they choose to prove otherwise. I felt in terms of some other companies that seem to make some decent moves. I thought that Zenith actually during the pandemic with a lot of, again, what they did wasn't particularly creative. They went back to the back catalog, but and maybe it was just supply chain issues that stopped them from making too many watches, but they didn't, that was always their problem. To my frustration, I've been interested in a Zenith for a while, but it used to be they would flood the market. You could get them gray or secondhand really, really at deep discount. And they've done very well with that, with their original sports models, probably because they look so much like Daytona. Yeah, because they look so much like Daytonas. So I think that was pretty solid. I think Cartier as well, which is one of the only established brands that I feel like actually takes risks with some of their designs. And I suppose they can afford to because they make all their money on jewelry. So if they want to take chances with weird watch designs, I think they've done some stuff. And then I do agree. Yeah, the Tudor thing, it's interesting. So because they feel like the Black Bay company, and I'm not sure I like what they were doing at the end of last year, where it felt like they heard the complaint and they're like, you're right, we're too much into Black Bay. Let's do a bunch of Pelagos too. It's like, but they're both dive watches.
I mean, I just think they just have so much potential, but they always have to think about, okay, let's not upset Big Brother and just listen to what people want. We just have to make a watch. We can't make it too good. You know what I mean? Then that's it.
And I do like the extended power reserves in the in-house movements, but I still shake my head when I was at an AD and I had them show me the silver cased Black Bay, which I really like with the taupe dial and everything. And then you flip it over and you're like, there's this completely Spartan movement that they put a display case pack on. And it's like, you're not Seiko 5. Why are you doing this? Why would you show off this movement? It's ugly. It's like you should. And when I see it, what I think is you cheaped out and didn't want to put steel on the case back. So you displayed it because sapphire is less. And they did the same on the gold one. Like you're asking someone to pay $16,000 for a Tudor and you can't even put gold on the back of the watch. You're going to show them a movement that doesn't even have some laser etched, outside of the rotor saying Tudor, it's got nothing. There's no machine turning or anything. I mean, Omega puts way more effort into their movements. Speaking of, while I'm whining about Omega, let's bring up Omega and their endless SKU list.
Let's do it. Let's do that.
I'm just like them and Seiko. I think I heard last year Seiko released more watches in 2022 than there are days in 2022. They actually had more than 365 different SKUs. Ridiculous.
Yeah, Seiko has a thing going on with their fancy dials. I'll give them that. Omega, look, I just wish they just would stop copying Rolex in every single release they did. I mean, you can rattle off everything, every release they've done. The past year or two has just been almost a Rolex homage, from the OPs to the Ultra Deep, to the what do you call it, the green, that green moonshine, and their other moonshine that resembled like John Mayer or other Rolex Oyster Flex Daytonas. I just think they really need to cut it out and stop just copying what Rolex does.
It drives me crazy that they have so many just limited edition Omega Seamasters. It's like you can't, like everyone can't be limited edition. If you're gonna make, if they sell 5,000 of them, they'll make 5,000 of them. If they'll make 20,000, they'll make 20,000, and they'll still call it a limited edition. And it's like, and they've got the Olympics, and they've got James Bond, and they've got
Grand Seiko does the same.
Yep. Grand Seiko loves their limited edition. The one thing, and this is actually true as well for, granted, the Grand Seiko I had was an older model, but I would bring up with Omegas of all the stuff, and they do some neat complications when they want to flex. What I really would like them to do is maybe try and get the thickness down a bit. I know they upped it when they went with that coaxial, design movement thing they've got. But their watches are just thicker than anything else because of that movement. And I really wish they would get it down just a little bit. Like maybe go for a millimeter off of all their watches.
And one final thing on Omega, and just from a branding perspective and marketing, I mean, they're just too gimmicky. They just use too much of mainstream media in their brand and stuff, like James Bond, Ultraman, which is cool. I'm a fan, but Snoopy and AP is guilty of this too. They did all the Marvel collabs, sports stars. You don't see this with Rolex. You don't see them, outside of maybe James Cameron is a slight outlier, but it's the media stars. They use Rolex to promote themselves, but with Omega and AP to a certain extent, they're using these media objects to promote the brand. And I just feel like Rolex and Patek have it right this way when building the brand.
And the last thing I thought, and we'll probably be at our 90 minutes once we do this, is way back at the start of the stream. Nicholas asked about predictions for Watches and Wonders. I'm going to morph this a little bit, though. It doesn't have to be Watches and Wonders. I just want predictions for 2023. It doesn't have to be a major Swiss brand. It can be anything. It can be affordable. It can be high end. But I'll start with Dave, actually, and we'll just sort of go around the screens, if you don't mind. Any thoughts of what we're going to see here? For those that don't, I think most of the people watching probably know, but for those that don't know, Watches and Wonders is kind of the big show for the Swiss that's going to be happening here in a couple weeks. But sometimes before that and during that, we see other brands dropping stuff, and there's stuff that happens all throughout the year anyway. It's like video games. It's no longer E3 anymore. Now it's just all throughout the year. So
yeah, my larger prediction is that we're going to continue to see the watch market trend downward, really probably till the end of the year. I work in finance, and in general, the expectation is that throughout the beginning of 2023, we're just going to continue to see bad news, turmoil, up and down, and inevitably in the fall, next winter, we're going to see some sort of broader recovery. I think watch collecting follows a very similar mantra as an equity market would, and the economy in general. People are going to be like, maybe my current watch is fine. Maybe I'm going to wait. They probably could still spend that money and still, be perfectly fine. But people in their mind are calming down and slowing down a little bit. And a lot of that American COVID money that people had saved up over the last couple of years, they've deployed a lot of that money in the last 6 months. So they may be out of that extra $15,000 or $2,000 or $25,000 they might have saved up. So I would say that things are going to continue to trend down over the summer, and then we'll see a broader recovery and stabilization thereafter.
Do you think it has mostly to do with interest rates, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people carry money on the line of credit, right? They might buy a watch in cash, but they still might have 60 grand on the line of credit. Well, you could have used that money, that $12,000 or $2,000 or $200, and put it on your line of credit, and it went, and not had a watch. So I think in general, just the rising interest rates have caused anxiety. That anxiety has got people to think twice before spending money. And
yeah, I mean,
that's just
I see your point. I think also to add to that, it's like the whole slowdown with watches just coincided right when interest rates started shooting to the moon. It's like, okay, do I buy a watch? Do I buy a stock or crypto, or do I put my money in T-bills, which are yielding 4 or 5%? But now I mean, it's been a busy week for banks these days. And we see the Fed. I don't mean to make this a finance discussion at all, but we see the Fed starting to. They're seeing their bread and butter, these banks going down. So they're seeing the key. They're seeing they're trying to like hold off on this. Might be the catalyst. The banks the banks going under. That might be the catalyst to Fed slowing down the interest rate increases, and then thus investors instead putting their money instead of cash and short-term bonds back into risk assets like watches. But Dave, I see your point. I mean, it may take some time still before it all recovers.
Yeah. In Canada, we have a lot of floating rate debt, so people have a variable interest rates on their debt. So, I mean, if your mortgage payment or the payment on your debt has gone up $200 a month from where it was, it's like, that's my extra, watch fund money, right? So, I think that's just trickling its way through the economy in one way or another.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, and it wouldn't surprise me if we do see total sales of watches down, at least new watches. You know, used gets, obviously we saw a lot of the hype pieces, some of these market pieces that we used for the ToT today have fallen quite a bit since March of 2021. I think a lot of that tied to, that was right when crypto collapsed as well, and people were putting money into these sort of assets, those really hype ones in particular. I don't know, but really the interesting thing with watches is because of the increases in inflation and supply chain related prices mean they've been driving up their own costs for the retail pricing. So while the demand is lessening because of higher interest rates, we're also seeing companies raise their prices because the cost to make a thing is more than it was 24 months ago, which is interesting. But okay, I love that prediction because finances. I've actually shifted a lot of my regular savings more into T-bills at this point because the interest rates are so good. I'd rather wait and see if the floor is going to fall out and then throw the money into the equities and let it, ride the recovery up. Anything already in equities, I don't touch, but I've turned to a lot more treasury bonds lately.
And here I am. I'm still investing in Beanie Babies, so maybe we should.
You see,
talk after.
they're filled with fun, so that's.
Hey, Alton, I'll tell you, if you had Lego in a box, it outperformed gold over the last 30 years.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Got some Lego behind me.
Tony,
but you wouldn't want to leave them in the box.
Tony, any watch predictions for this year? Watches and wonders or otherwise?
I'm going to go out and say that I don't think we're going to see anybody really jumping out there with something new and super weird this year. I think with the way things have been going the last couple of years and the downturn starting, they're going to be more conservative with their new SKUs and new designs, stuff that falls into the normal expected.
Okay. Alton, any thoughts? Anything in the markets you follow, watch markets that you follow, that you think any big news? Zealous going to do something surprising for us, or?
Sorry, my feed just froze there for a second. What'd you say?
I was just asking if any predictions that you have, including in the space that you focus on, like as some of these more established companies like Zealous are working on something you think different than what they're known for. What they're known for is working really well for them. I see Zealous has showed up in the chat, so they were fresh on my mind.
There's definitely some trends in 2023 that I think are going to deepen. One of them is a focus on unisex sizes and unisex watches. So they used to make a 36 millimeter and marketed as a woman's watch. Well, a lot of companies aren't doing that anymore. They're just 36 millimeter watches and styles that appeal to both genders, and not gendering them in their advertising. And I see a lot of companies that are focusing more on sustainability, which is kind of BS, I think, to be honest, in a lot of ways. But, we're using sustainable bioceramics or whatever. We're now putting our watches in crappy cardboard boxes instead of wooden boxes to save the planet, that kind of stuff. And so sustainability, I think, is going to be a big buzzword. It has kind of already started, and it's going to just go further. And there's going to be a new color, I think, this year. Tiffany blue is kind of getting played out. And
what color will it be? What will 23 be the year of? So 2022 was green, right? And 2021 was, what was that, blue? Or maybe that was the year of still having bronze. I don't remember.
Right, we're going to get plaids this year.
I think color is going to play a big factor in it. The designs aren't going to change. Companies aren't going to be putting as much R&D into changing designs, but what they will play with is color, because that's cheap and easy and attention grabbing. So certainly this is going beyond my scope when you start getting into these higher end brands, but these are generally things I'm seeing happening.
Okay. Interesting.
Very cool.
Ken, forecasts.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped long ago trying to predict what Rolex does. It's just so difficult to guess what they're doing. And even if anybody has any good idea, I'm sure if their team sees it, then they might even just do something like pull that from the entire release altogether. But I mean, just looking, minor prediction is I just don't think they'll do much with the Daytona. A lot of folks are calling for a bigger size Daytona. I think they have a good size at the moment. I think that's their flagship model is the Panda stainless steel Panda Daytona. There's a market there for everybody, for smaller wristed folks, for women, for everybody that Daytona. So I don't see them changing much of the Daytona. Maybe the movement. I also don't believe any of these leaks that have come out, have quote unquote came out, that were spread out somewhere. Yellow Gold Hulk. Let's see, a righty Sprite. A two-tone rose gold sub, maybe an Oyster Flex Platinum that I see. I just don't see any of it happening, but I won't even like wrap my head over it. So yeah, nothing too fancy, man. But just I mean, just one more thing on watch markets in general. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's anything can happen in the short term, guys. I mean, whatever drives like equity, risk markets, Feds, something that happens, in the politics here and there. But I mean, looking into next year, and in the long term, I mean, if you buy watches, you have to be in it for the long term. You cannot just think unless that's your business, in which case then you're a flipper slash dealer. But if you're a collector, you can't really worry about all this short term fluctuations in the market, just like any type of risk investment. I mean, the fundamentals are all there. Demand soaring in Middle East, in Asia. It'll still be here, and they're just always going to have. And then we're just still in the early innings of this game, folks. So I would just say buy what you like, wait, be patient, and then you'll I think you'll be okay in the end if you need to park your money somewhere and no other pressing matters.
Yeah, for me with watches, while my collection has ended up with a lot of dollars in it, I've never looked at it as an investment. And they've been, even with the wet baths I've taken, haven't been. I usually buy everything used. That's high dollar like that anyway. So most of it's already out. So even if I do a trade and take a loss, I'm okay with that. That's part of the collecting journey, and the the lower end watches that I would buy and sell and take a few $100s off. And it's part of the just the joy of going through it is how I've done it. And compared to other things like cars, like regular cars and stuff, these are not big. I mean, again, with Dave and Tony with pinball, those have held prices so high for a long time. I'd say watches, you take a bit more of a hit than that, but even that market, I think, is starting to finally correct itself. In terms of predictions, I know the Rolex one is one that's come up a lot, and Neff had kind of hit on this because they've got a couple model anniversaries that are happening. I think obviously Daytona, but I think it's also some sort of anniversary for the Milgauss. So regardless, the Milgauss hasn't been touched in a while. After 2 years ago, when the Rolex Explorer 2 had their 50th anniversary, and they did nothing, and by nothing I mean they did some sort of redesign. When you put them side by side, I can't tell them apart. There was a new movement, and there were such subtle changes. I watched 2 videos explain to me what those subtle changes were, and after it was done, it went right out of my head, and I was like, I can't tell them apart. They didn't even make a GMT hand out of Rolex green or something, just something special. They didn't do anything other than put in a new movement. I've seen some people think that they won't do a new movement in the Daytona because it's a lot of work to do a new movement. I think they've probably been working on a new, better power reserve movement for the Daytona for years, and it would not surprise me if they finally update that. So that's what I'm thinking. They might play things a little more loose with the Milgauss because that's their quote unquote fun watch, but I'm not expecting anything substantive out of them. Other Watches and Wonders things, I think JLC will disappoint. They've been disappointed, other than their super high complications, which I don't think they're going to have another quadri whatever reverso with 20,000 complications in it, which was cool. But at 1.1 million, of course, it could be. That's been a company that feels completely listless outside of its reverso line. I'm not expecting much. Possibly, now that they're independent, maybe Gerard Perregaux and Ulysse Nardon might have something, but I think it's still too soon. I think it's still too soon for them to have developed much of their own, because they used to be, I think, with the Carrying Group, but now that they're independent, they could, in theory, be more free. So if you're thinking about big brands doing something major at Watches and Wonders, I would say Cartier might have something interesting. They usually do. So they would be one. Expect new Black Bay to be announced by Tudor.
Obvious, yeah.
Maybe a new color scheme for the Pelagos also, because now remember they're diversified. And I would say probably before Watches and Wonders, if they do it like they did last year, Omega will probably drop their releases a little bit before. And yes, I do agree with Nicholas. I do think they'll do something with the Seamaster. I don't know if it's going to be this extreme, like re-releasing a Seamaster 300, which, I mean, they do have a current 300 line. The current Seamaster 300Ms date back just to 2018, but historically, Omega has revamped that lineup quite a bit. They've stuck with the same basic genetics ever since Pierce Brosnan wore it in Bond because it was so popular. I don't think they're going to move the 300M dramatically away from that, but we might see something in a new, some more stuff in a different material, like maybe a few more titaniums
or a heritage line.
Well, that's what the regular I hate the naming convention, but the Seamaster 300 is in the Heritage collection, and the 300M is the one we think about with Bond. So Nicholas was pointing out the Heritage 300, which is the more 60s style look, but which in some ways has a cleaner. It has, well, not in some ways. I'd say it almost always has a cleaner aesthetic.
I think pretty much all of Omega's Heritage lines are my preferred of their. Like on the Speedmaster 57 is my preferred Speedmaster. But I really like all of their Heritage lines.
All right. Dennis, are you going to talk about your Lange some more? Or are you going to save that for a video?
I'll have to save it for a review video, assuming I can put one out. I usually wear them for at least a week to figure out what I like and don't like. And
are you going to wear it to TPF next weekend?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. TPF, I'll probably wear my Mr. Jones watch, Ricochet, because I've had more compliments on the Ricochet than any watch, all my watches combined. Now, I did wear it to a pinball convention, so that helped. But that's a fun watch. So, yeah, I'll probably wear it.
Neff asked about your Longa. He missed the beginning when you introduced your new lovely collection edition.
Yeah, I traded 5 of my dress, and one of my dive watches in and did a exchange with cash to Watchbox and picked up one of the older Longa ones. This is the 101032 that uses the old movement where they have the segregated bridges. Sort of been my grail dress watch for a number of years at this point. And I thought, you know what, I have so many dress watches now. It's getting silly rotating. Let's just dump them and then close my eyes and pull the trigger and spend the cash instead of paying down debt. All my debt's actually paid down, so I didn't. I have no more. I have no house payments, no car payments, and no credit card debt. So it's just like
living the dream.
That's all right.
Yep. Someday.
Is that the one with the blue hands, Dennis?
No, they're rose gold hands.
Okay.
And so, yeah. So, but whether or not the review will be recent or not depends on if I already contacted them, because if it's running 53 seconds fast a day, then I'm like, yeah, you guys need to re-regulate. I'm not going to open this up and regulate it myself. I'll regulate a lot of my watches, but once we cross a certain price threshold, especially if they have warranties, I'm like, you know what? That's a professional's job at this point. I've seen when it's a boss stock, I'm more than happy to regulate it myself. Okay, well, I think that's it. So we'll go ahead and we'll do outros and we'll go in reverse order. So Ken, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, nothing much, guys. Thanks so much for giving the opportunity and, giving, first of all, Dennis, listening to your fans for their ideas and actually executing them and, making me a part of the show. I really appreciate it. I really had a great time and I'm a big fan of all of you guys.
Well, thanks for agreeing to do it. And he's one of the Watches Within His Club members, which is a whole 99 cents a month. So I listen extra special to people who pay me 99 cents.
Yeah, I've been a member for a whole month now. Yeah.
And Neff, I did think that I have a demagnetizer. I tried it. I used a compass on it. It had a little bit of movement. I maybe gained or dropped a second off of it by demagnetizing, but otherwise it doesn't seem to help. So I think it's everything else on spec is fine. So it's like amplitude, beat error look great. It looks like someone actually just bumped the regulator when they were casing it or something and notched it up to 50 seconds a day. But I don't know. I told them to let me know if there's something weird with the double spring barrel or something because I don't know if it does something weird on it's not a spring drive though. It shouldn't be weird. A time grapher should be able to graph it. Alton, your channel.
Yeah, it's so glad that we connected, and thank you so much for having me today. It's great to get to know you guys a little bit and see everybody in the chat. If you're interested in watches in the more affordable to mid-tier range, then check out my channel. It's called Half Past Blog. And I think my second most recent video is all about what it takes to start a YouTube channel and to make the big bucks. If you want to find out how much I make on my channel every month or per video, then check out that video and you'll get an insight into just how rich I'm receiving from all of these videos.
That was actually your first video that I saw, and it depressed me. It brought back all the, because it's so weird. Part of the reason why I do the YouTube thing is because I have content creation, a background in pinball that I've done for years, but I do it all audio. It's all podcast stuff. And so I wanted to try something, learn something new. And then of course you're trying to, you want to have a bigger audience, so you feel like your time's worth the effort and all that. And it's just sort of like, oh my God, I forgot because it took us years to grind. Tony and I started our podcast and we were happy when we crossed 50 listeners an episode. And then, now it's like, it's well over 50, and it's just different to have started all over again. And your video brought all that pain back.
Yeah, I know the tortured artists that we are, right?
Yeah, the pain. So speaking of Tony, thanks again for joining in. What would you like to plug?
Thank you for having me. As always, I can be found on the Eclectic Gamers Podcast, and that's about it. But this is the time of year when the Instagram that I plug every episode and barely ever do anything with goes active again, because we're on our way to TPF next weekend. So it will be going active for at least a few posts during the course of the driving in the course of the weekend until, I forget about it and then realize as we're driving home on Sunday, oh, heck, I haven't posted anything in like 3 days. So, but I'm going to try and be better this year. I don't do this social media thing very well. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah, for those that don't know who are watching, TPF is the Texas Pinball Festival. It's probably the largest pinball convention in the world, and it happens at the end of March every year. And Tony and I drive down to Dallas. It's about an 8-hour trip for us, and go. And a lot of the new reveals are there. And because we've podcasted Tony and I have podcasted for like 6 years at this point, and I also do another podcast as well. So we talk to a lot of people who interact with us through the show who don't normally get to meet us, because this is really the only big show we go to.
It's the watches and wonders of pinball.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of pinball people are into watch collecting, because anything mechanical is obviously that's
I can see it.
That's the draw. So hence why these people happen to be watch collectors as well, as pinball folks. And speaking of that, Dave, you host a separate podcast, not with me.
I do. I don't get blessed with Tony and yourself on a regular basis. I'm a co-host of the Silverball Chronicles podcast, a pinball history podcast where you learn about all the politics, shenanigans, and history of pinball. You can check us out at silverballchronicles.com, in your podcatcher with Silverball Chronicles. And if you want to support the show, you can swing on over to patreon.com/silverballchronicles. $6 a month, you get early ad-free access to the podcast, and you can learn about all the fun stuff.
It's a deeply popular show too. It's very well researched, and that's a credit to Dave. So
it's my next episode's going to be a Q&A episode because I want to take a month off.
Okay, well, you do deserve it, because I look at how deep your show notes and research are, because I helped post on the RSS for it, and it was just like, oh my God, Dave, there's too much citation, but I respect it. I'm Dennis with Watches with Dennis. Obviously, you're on that channel, so there's nothing to plug about that. Other than if you want to join the club, as I know it's 99 cents a month, there's probably a link somewhere around there somewhere that you can click on. And we'll do another one of these in the future. But until next time, I just want to say take care, everybody. And those of you who tuned in live, I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you on the next one.